right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Here's Why You're Wrong. I am Mick. We've got Jim over here. We have our special guest, Jeff, tonight. Thank you again, Jeff, for coming in and
thank you.
Willing to sit down with us. We are, and in the booth, we've got John and Mike. Hi, Mike. Mike waved for those of you at home that maybe didn't get to see that. So tonight we're going to be talking about education as our topic. I want to remind folks you can give us a call at 503-207-7135. So give us a call if you want to join the discussion here about education. It's also on the little banner at the bottom of your screen. You can check us out on Facebook or at our website, wrongtvshow.com. So please check us out. Give us a call. We love to hear from you guys. That's the whole point of the show, is to have a discussion about things. And the three of us are happy to sit here and yap, but we'd love to have you guys call in.
Yeah, please call in.
Yeah, that's what makes it
in.
fun. So we'd like to start off each show talking a little bit about current events and what's going on. And it seems, we were just talking about this, it seems like what's on everybody's mind is, or all we're hearing about is this government shutdown, which started when? Tuesday? Monday? Tuesday?
The first? Was it the 1st of October?
Yeah, I guess it was the 1st.
The beginning of the end of the fiscal year, the beginning of the next.
So here's the way I understand things have happened, and I'm going to try not to put any bias on this, although I probably will. There is a debt limit of which the country can borrow. You can't borrow more money than this. When you get to a certain point where you're borrowing very close to that limit, you have to go and raise the limit, and they do this every few years. And the last time it happened, we had this same sort of thing, the same threaten to shut down the government because the Republicans didn't want to raise that debt limit. And again, they're saying this time we don't want to raise the debt limit without doing X, Y, Z. And so they've created a situation where they have said, the GOP has said, we will raise the debt limit if you get rid of Obamacare, basically, effectively.
Extortion, basically.
Well, that's how some people view it. They've said, you know, we will pass this budget if it defunds Obamacare here.
Right.
The Democrats are saying we're not here to negotiate that. This is about the debt ceiling, and this is what we have to do to raise this, and we're not going to join those two topics. And so they've been totally locking horns for the last week, and here we are. Does that sound?
I think that the debt ceiling limit comes later. I think the discussion right now is just funding, is a temporary spending bill, and that's further down the road. That's going to be another. That's going to be another.
That's in a few weeks.
That's in a few weeks.
Well, what's the spending bill?
It's just the House has the purse strings of the country, so they can shut the flow off of funds if they choose to, or open the spigot. Then the debt limit, like Jeff was saying, is the deficit that the United States runs that keeps getting raised.
Well, it's effectively to pay off what we've already spent, right? The debt limit is, you know, we've already spent this much. We need to borrow this much.
You have these bills you have to pay, and so if that goes over the current debt limit, then you have to raise it so that we can pay the bills.
Right.
But first they have to pay the bills, and that's an appropriations. There are things that have already been paid, and so the Affordable Care Act is off and running even while the government is shut down, because that's been paid for. That's been stamped and
has
funded.
been shown by the Congressional Budget Office that it will save money.
Eventually, when it's all is working, and assuming that we can get everybody or most people to buy into it, to spread the risk, make the risk pool really big, to take care of those people like me that are getting older, and I'll need more health care as I get older unless I tip over just kind of suddenly.
Right.
And then,
which might be better for everyone involved.
yeah, that might be it. Is there a burial benefit in it? I don't think so.
Well,
it's kind of like the president said, one faction of one party demanding to have their way, or they're not going to play.
Right.
And it's like before the Civil War, it was Democrats at that time. The Southern Democrats were a small part of the whole United States, and because of slavery, and they wanted to retain that, they held up and obstructed lots of other things happening in the government. This time it happens to be the Republican Party and the lunatic faction of the Republican Party. So.
The reason it drives me so insane, the Obamacare thing in particular, is that this is like, and I've lost count at this point. I know it's more than 41 times that they've tried to repeal the thing.
It's in the 50s.
It's yeah. I mean, it's like okay. The
Of all the
Supreme Court-
problems, yeah.
The Supreme Court has said it's fine. We have reelected him president after Obamacare.
Right.
Like, so clearly we knew he came with Obamacare. The country still voted for him to be president. And now you're going to waste 50 times trying to repeal this thing. It's not working. And when all that fails, you just say, well, fine, we're just going to
We're
shut
not
down
going to
then.
play. We're taking our ball and we're going home.
And it's so
yeah.
ridiculous. The argument that could be made, and I'm going to be the devil's advocate here a little bit for this one party holding things hostage, is in a war situation or another situation where there was a real moral question, you might want the Democrats to be able to say, we don't want to bomb these people. And if even some of us don't agree, we can stop that from happening, even if we're the minority. And that sounds appealing, right? I mean, like, there's some democracy in that it's not just quite majority rules. There's some ins and outs, and I like the sound of that, but then this is an example of it being abused.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah, there's a point where, I guess in the big picture, there's harm being done for sure, but it's not at, well, I don't know, maybe it is life and death right now. But there are things that are annually funded that are not being funded now. So
Right.
parks are closed.
Right.
Paychecks, Social Security is not being processed. Things are not happening, and that really does have an effect, especially as time goes on. More and more.
Right before we came in, I actually read a funny article about a GOP senator. I think he was a senator. He may have been a congressman, but there was a video of him today at a veterans memorial where it's closed technically because of the shutdown, but the workers were still there, sort of helping people out, not quite letting them in, but showing them around the place and not letting them in. And he yelled at one of the employees that they should be ashamed of themselves for turning people away.
Wasn't he informed about what's going on?
And the day before, yesterday, he was on a talk show saying, I will do whatever I can to keep the government shut down until Obamacare is defunded. And then he's caught on camera yelling at this Park Service employee, telling them, you ought to be ashamed for turning veterans away from here. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's like this crazy bubble that's like,
Yeah.
do you not understand what's going on?
A funny side story is now the GOP is trying to hobble together small bills
Oh,
that
well,
would
yeah,
that would
we'll
fund
keep
certain
this open
things,
and, yeah.
right?
The distortion of reality has been like nothing I've ever seen for the last week, with people from both sides coming up to the podium and the Republicans saying, well, if the Democrats want to shut down the government, I guess that's what they're going to do.
Right.
And it's like, what world are you living in? I don't think anyone's
It's the
buying.
Fox News world. Yeah.
Oh, it's absolutely astounding. So we'll see. It's been 17 years since this happened last. Doesn't really affect me that much. I mean,
So
does it-
far,
does it
I
affect
mean,
any of us?
yeah.
So far, I haven't felt it, but I'm with you, Jim. So far, I'm not
I don't know
sure.
how long it would have to go
And if
before.
they don't pay the bills, it's a brave new world. Who knows how it's going to end up?
Well, that's just not an option. They all know that at some point. I mean, it's just
I
gotta-
think that there are people that would just as soon see that happen.
that are that fanatical.
Yeah, that are that fanatical about it.
I like to think that's not the case, but you may be right.
What gets me about the health care is there are political action committees that are funded by billionaires that have spent millions of dollars putting out disinformation, misinformation about the Affordable Care Act. And they all have all the health care they want, so it's like they don't want anybody else to have health care, or, it just seems to make sense if there's 50 million people without health care, and they wait and they wait and they wait until a chronic condition becomes acute, and then they go to an emergency room, and then we all pay because our rates go up because somebody has to pay for that.
This is
so
a
if
way
we
to
can
try to distribute that more.
Right, distribute
Which makes
it.
sense.
It makes. I'll pay a little more. I mean,
Right.
I don't know. I'm paying quite a bit now. I can pay a little more. I want to see my neighbor have medical care.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't seem like that
you
much
know,
to
if
ask.
nothing else, it seems like these days could be the opportunity to take something, get it started, the Affordable Care Act, and then work it to
Right.
make it better.
Right.
And
Right.
when you obstruct and try to shut it off completely, well, there's no reason or logic in that at all.
When you try
And that's
50-something
not-
times
right,
to
that's-
stop
And
it.
it's
that's
and
not
it's his
governing, is it?
signature. It's his. I mean, his 8 years of presidency. It's the shining.
It's got his name right on
You know,
it. thanks to
and you're gonna
Republicans.
if you're gonna go pound on that. I mean, he's gonna stand up and say no. You know.
Well, I don't know that it's perfect. I mean, it's a 2,000
not.
page
It's
bill.
not
God
perfect.
knows what's in there. It's the only thing I've seen come through the pipe to try to address this issue.
Right.
Let's give it a shot
Right.
and adjust along the way. I mean, you know, but nobody seems willing to do that. And I
More
just,
on this next week, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, we'll see at the
Big
next
topic.
show. Let's see if we're
Well,
still shut down at the
I'm gonna
next
see if
show.
I can't find someone that's knowledgeable about the Affordable Care Act in my medical
Hopefully
circle
someone-
of friends,
yeah.
and we'll see if we can't get somebody in to.
I don't understand it. I don't know anybody that does
I
understand
don't.
it.
Yeah.
But I know that getting rid of pre-existing conditions is a good thing, and that trying to get everybody health care is a good thing on its face. So let's give it a shot. That's my take. So, but again, I think it's totally separate from the spending bills or all this. I mean, that's the thing. They've arbitrarily decided we don't want this to happen, and we're not going to do anything until you take it back. And that's a silly way to. It's a very grade school way to go about things, which is my segue right into education.
I was thinking, about that.
You like
yeah.
that? That's why I get the big bucks.
I was
guys.
going to say, how is the budget battle going to affect education?
We'll see. That's one of the big topics around education, and we'll talk about that tonight. We're gonna start talking about education again. Give us a call 503-207-7135. We'd love to hear from you.
Please call us.
Chat on the air. Jeff is a principal of City View Charter School, which is a charter school here in Hillsborough. Hillsborough's only charter school.
Hillsborough's only charter.
And how long have you been there now, Jeff?
This is year 5.
Wow. Really?
Time
Wow.
goes by fast.
It does go by fast, yeah. And I've had children that have attended that school. Jim has had, in fact, that's where Jim and I met, was our kids attending the same school. And how long have you been in the education business? I mean, before City View, what's?
Since as a teacher, since 1978.
Wow.
So Jeff's been doing this since before I've been alive,
Wow.
which is bizarre to me, but probably bizarre to you too.
It is. I don't want to think about
I know.
that
Sorry,
way.
I'm sorry I brought that up. You've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
So you were a teacher for how long?
A teacher for 22 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Where'd you
Okay.
teach at?
Taught in Gresham, in Estacada, in Beaverton for a long time. In
High school or
elementary
elementary?
grades, 1st through 4th grade.
Uh-huh.
Taught in California, private school in California.
Yeah.
What do you
Nick's
got?
been drunk for 22 years.
Mick
Thank
doesn't
you,
drink.
Mike.
I tried to get him
I'm
to
a
drink, but he
teetotaler,
won't.
Mike.
Yeah.
I'm high on life, buddy. So how long have you been in the administrative side of things?
Well, let's see. Let me do the math. What would that be? 78, 22 years. That brings us up to
98.
2000. Yeah, 98, and then So since
Ever since then,
98.
you were an assistant principal. or
Since
what-
assistant principal, TOSA, teacher on special assignment
Oh.
in Beaverton, vice principal, yeah,
Okay.
and then principal.
So, more than 10 years since you've been in that branch of
that.
things. Jeff definitely has experience in a lot of these things. I was a board member at the charter school for a number of years and learned a lot about schools and education that
You've
way.
ran for school board
I've
positions
run for
twice.
school board twice in my life. And I'm passionate about education in general and kids, and so I was interested to talk about this, and I'm glad Jeff came on. One of the things that I want to start off talking about with is the this feeling like we're treating education differently today than we did when I was in school and over the years. Now, some of that is I was a kid when I was in school, so I don't really know what it was viewed as from the outside. But it feels like over the last few years, and certainly since I've been involved in the school, that you hear more and more negativity about how schools are performing. And, it's different in every state, but I mean, even here in Oregon, you hear a lot about, the kids aren't adequately prepared Why is my kid not learning this? Why are the teachers not doing this? Why it feels like there's a lot of blame going on. And I'm not sure what's at the, all the while we're cutting the budget. We're cutting the budget and saying you're gonna have less money to educate our kids with, but I'm still mad when this is going on. So let's hear from Jeff first. First of all, do you feel that same way? Do you feel that you've heard that like I have, and that it's changed, or has it always been this way?
I think that it's changed. I think that school was kind of seen as the great hope, through the 60s and 70s as the Cold War. There was a shift, and as we became more polarized as liberals and conservatives around Ronald Reagan time. Things started to shift, and the blame then came onto the shoulders of public education. Liberals thinking, okay, this is a the great experiment, and we're gonna raise the masses, while conservatives were thinking public education is simply another branch of the government, right? And so you want to shut those things down. School choice became a greater issue. Charter schools, private schools, folks who had the money taking their kids out, put them in private schools. So, that's been, I think, education has become a political football, not unlike what we're just talking about. It's just another form of that, and something else to kind of kick around. So, I mean, it's interesting that your perception is, and the perception I think in general is that schools take a bad rap. But if you talk to people about their particular neighborhood school or their kid's teacher, for the most part, people think that things are going pretty well.
It's like politicians. Everybody rails against the government, but if you say Ron Wyden or your particular representative, well, that's funny how that works.
I think in really general terms of we're cutting the budget because I know that they could cut the budget in these places, or I know they're wasting money here and there. But if you try to push them on a little bit and say, well, where do you want to cut them?
Yeah.
Let's get the budget out and have a look. They would have no answer in the world.
Or people have their own little pet things that they don't feel are important. Somebody who doesn't look at the high school level, look at programs that might move towards industry, or
sports even. If their kids don't do sports,
sure.
They say, why are we spending millions of dollars on football?
Cut that out, right.
When, there's some kids that brings a lot to their life. They learn a lot from that. They learn a lot from, all different aspects of school.
Yeah.
And, but I think that, when their own teachers, if you ask them about their child's teacher, they say, they're doing a great job, because they can see what they're doing. They see them bringing in their own supplies and working hard and meeting with each parent and doing conferences and that. And it's hard to see that and then say that they're doing a bad job, because that's not the case. Which brings up another subject, which is how to. I mean, you can't say a good teacher versus a bad teacher necessarily, but like any occupation, there are people who are good at it and there are people who are bad at it. I'm an IT guy. I've seen a lot of bad IT guys in my day, and I've seen the ones that were good. Education is treated a little bit differently in that it's hard to tell. Can you base it on test scores? Not quite, right? Because there's so many factors there. There's parent involvement. There's kids with learning disabilities or things like that, and there's other aspects of the environment that you can't tell the teacher, well, all your kids are failing, so you must be a bad teacher, when they say, well, 90% of my kids are under the poverty line, they only have one parent at home, they're not doing this. Is there a way to do that?
It's a very tricky thing, and right now it's really a hot topic. And to add to that list of variables is the fact that the teachers see the kids 152 days or so, in the course of
less each year. It seems
and less each year. You're right about that. So, how does that all play into it as well? It's not very much time to affect any change, to affect much change. But yet, often and for the most part, there is, because kids are sponges, and they do learn, in spite sometimes of whoever's out there. So, it is tricky. I know in Oregon right now, public schools are dealing with Senate Bill 290, which has mandated that districts come up with a new evaluation system for teachers and administrators, and that has 4 parts, and one is a pretty strict standard set of standards, a way to measure those standards, which would be a simple rubric which teachers and schools have been using for a long time. You know, satisfactory, proficient, and then back the other direction to you know, not making the cut. You know, as a system 1, 2, 3, 4, and then in those 4 parts, there is the part that takes the standardized measurements that are out there,
Well,
whether it
and
be the
that's-
state
is that
tests.
Common Core stuff that they're talking about now, or it's different? Because that's a whole other discussion that I'm hearing a lot of lately. I mean, we're implementing it. I mean, I guess this year, right? Is it starting?
Well, yeah, that's looks like we have
We got
someone
someone
on.
we got Dylan
Dylan.
on the phone. Okay. Well, hey, Dylan, are you there? He'll be there momentarily as soon as we... Dylan, can you hear me? Nothing, John. Dylan? Nope.
He's on, I think. I think we had him on mute. Are you there, Dylan?
Yeah,
Oh, there he is. Now I got him. Dylan, you hear me?
I can hear you.
What do you got to say about education?
Well, first off, can everybody hear me all right?
Yep,
I can hear you, yes.
We got you now, yeah.
Okay. Well, what I have to say about education is that there's a lot of kids nowadays going to school and a lot of them not going to school. The ones that are, some of them are doing pretty well. Others, those are kind of the kids that everybody kind of shakes their heads and feels sympathy for. Basically, if you get bad grades, it's not your fault. It's not the teacher's fault. That's just the way that you see things. Everything at school is a matter of POV, basically. And if you don't understand something, you ask for somebody to help you. But even if that doesn't work, there's not really much that can happen. If you want to remain who you are and just be good at what you're good at, then I think that schools should encourage that, and so far that's not really how it's been going. Everything depends on a system.
Well, okay, I disagree with you, and here's why. I understand what
Here's
you're...
why I'm wrong.
Here's why you're wrong. What you're saying is, you know, we want to be creative and different, and each human being is different, and I get that part. But there is such a thing as using that as a crutch and an excuse as to why you're not trying your best. And, you know, nobody wants perfect grades and straight... Well, that's not true. Everybody wants perfect grades. But nobody's expecting perfect grades, straight A's out of people. But there are certain things you need to learn in life. I mean, education, at least K through 12, is to prepare you for life with sort of the standards and at least the bare minimum that you need to get by in life.
To function
Mick,
in a...
one-
yeah.
Real quick, guys. One of the things I've seen, I tutor kids, I moonlight, and I've noticed that kids these days, even high schoolers, they have so many feelings about like every class.
Yes,
And
but...
like we didn't. Let me finish. So I think the fact that there's the internet and technology, things are so easy. So I think that a lot of kids, I'm not saying everyone, but a large proponent of kids, at least here in the States, that it's harder to overcome that hurdle. That since things are so easy in life now, with like maps and geography and like resources and stuff, they really don't see the joy as much, or they have feelings about the joy of just learning something new. Whereas there have been studies that say the more challenging things that you learn throughout your whole life, those people are the most satisfied with their profession, their like lives, like their that part of their lives. But I think that that's a factor, and I want to see what the principal thinks. I want to see what you think, Jeff, because you've been in it for a long time.
Well, I think you make good points, and Dylan's point about POV and point of view, I think is well taken. I think that it does. It does come down to that. I think that a lot of what we see in education now, the emphasis on measurement of a fairly narrow band of skills is I think an example of a point of view that is taken by by people who have the power to make decisions and then mandate those. Mick, what I'm hearing you say is that there are basic skills that you need to function in a modern world, and that modern world is getting more and more complicated. Mm-hmm. How do we make sure then that both of those points of view are taken, and we can actually do something with them in an educational setting? I think that really gets to the crux. I hear what the caller's saying about about the feelings, about the need to be seen as an individual and be given the opportunity to move towards those goals that they have. And I think that joy of learning may be missing in a lot of our schools these days. And in fact, I'm reading more about the need. People see the need for that to come back, the social emotional piece of us recognizing that as human beings, that's got to be a piece of what we do in schools.
So are you saying, Jeff, that's missing in the classroom?
I think
I don't sense that at all.
Yeah, I think that it's not missing in individual classrooms. I think because teachers know that, they instinctively know that, and they close the doors and do that often. And this complicates that issue then about teacher preparedness, teacher evaluation, because teachers will do that. I think good teachers will shut the doors and they'll do those things that engage their kids in spite of what they're being told that they need to do.
You mean the student doesn't do as well on the standardized tests, so that reflects badly on the teacher, but the teacher may be teaching the child how to find a joy in learning and go down a path that's not, fitting in the box that...
I think that can happen often, and boy, how do you measure that?
It's
Right.
tough. Mike, I'm going to cut you off real soon here, so watch yourself.
Are you talking about me?
Yeah. I felt like you were going to pipe in any minute.
No.
Okay.
I'm totally done.
Okay.
But it certainly illustrates
I just wanted to get that out there.
No,
That
I
was
think
a
it's a
good
valid
comment.
point. I want to
Good
address what
comment.
Dylan said. Thank you, Dylan, for calling in. The point of view that I'm a unique individual. Maybe I'm not getting good grades, but I'm learning in other things, and society just doesn't get me, or school doesn't get me. I relate to that 100% from when I was in
Right.
school. Okay, everybody I think goes through that at some point.
Yeah.
And when you're on the other side as a parent per se, which I am now, and you look back and now your
Right.
kids are in school, it's a complete 180 now because now I'm the enforcer. I understand that feeling, but I need to say to essentially the younger version of myself, you're going to have to trust me on this. I know it feels this way. Mm-hmm. You must learn this, this, and this.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I know you feel like you don't have to. I know you're going to quit at 14 and be a rock star and, live in a bus and it's going to be awesome, except that it's not. So listen to me, do these things. And how do you do that without erasing the fun and the joy and the,
Right.
and
It's a good question.
I think no matter what you do, kids are going to put their own unique spin on things and will find a joy that they love. I mean, I think it's rare that you don't. I don't think we're brainwashing masses of kids, certainly. But, it's tough.
Do you guys have fun at work?
Sometimes.
Who, me? Are you talking to me?
No, I'm talking to all you guys. It's like all this emotion. I think one of the benefits of these Koreans and these Chinese and Japanese, they don't have so much emotion. Like, just sit down and learn because you might get a good job and you might be able to afford to pay all your bills. Like, life isn't about fun
Well, there's a notion...
and being understood.
There's a notion of, I guess, particularly maybe in the Asian community, of this tiger mom mentality, which they've talked about in recent years and books have been published of, they really have a huge emphasis on education. And, I mean, in Japan, I forget how long they go to school, but, I mean, it's like, 10 hours a day, no weekends. I mean, they have a crazy schedule compared to what we are used to in the United States. And you could say, well, boy, are they succeeding in science and math and all these things? And you can say, yes, that's great. And I think people in the U.S. would say, but what are they giving up in exchange for that? And is there a creativity, you know, where's all the music coming from? It's coming from the United States. You know, music and movies throughout the world. I mean, they have their own sort of regional things, but I mean, Hollywood is always going to be Hollywood. And
Well, if
the
you
rest of
want
the world tries to emulate that and, you know, and try to follow that as much as they may hate Western culture sometimes. We're definitely the leaders in art. I mean, it seems to me, and some of that is because what we've allowed, this creativity and that sort of thing.
Have you seen recently on products, mostly I think I've seen on like electronic products, there's a new stamp, and it doesn't say made in China, it says designed in the United States.
Oh, I have seen that.
And
I haven't seen that.
always hasn't been there, you know?
Which is sort of a weird twist on, I mean, so probably manufactured in China still.
Right,
for
right.
super low
manufactured in
prices,
China
but
Right.
or
we came up with it here.
made
Yeah.
in China, idea stolen from the United States. Yeah.
Well, I think that tag is trying to point out that the idea is more valuable than the product.
Well,
This is the place where the ideas come from.
Right, right.
I think what you're getting at, Mick, a little bit is maybe, and maybe Mike too, is using your desire to be understood as an excuse to be lazy about
I was
learning.
implying that, yes.
Implying that, you know, and what is it said that if you want to be professional or excellent at something, you have to put 10,000 hours into it. But I think what Jeff is saying, or what I hear Jeff saying also is, if a child maybe doesn't fit into the testing box exactly right, but the teacher can bring out of that person a desire and a motivation to spend 10,000 hours doing something that's not in that box, but is creative, the person might not do well in that box, but the teacher was able to bring out the motivation to spend 10,000 hours doing something else that might lead to something like, you know, maybe not Steve Jobs, but you know, a creative line or endeavor that you never would have thought happened because the teacher was able to bring that out of the child instead of a teacher trying to, you know, keep the child, you know, stay within the lines or whatever. You know.
I feel like today we are more accepting than ever of different kinds of kids and different styles of learning. I mean, I didn't feel that way when I went to school, you know, in the 80s and the 90s. I feel like we have more options today, drama, art, all these things.
Raylene's
We've
on
got
the
a
phone?
caller here,
Oh.
Raylene. Let's see if we can hear Raylene. Raylene, can you hear us? They're
Yes,
pushing
I
buttons. Oh, there you go. Okay, now we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can
Yes.
now. Yeah. What do you got for us?
Well, as you were saying, Mike, you were saying how the kids need to do certain steps, and even though they don't feel like they really need that education in those different areas, there is a foundation that needs to be built before you can be creative out in the world. But I think that we should have the availability to have a foundation but allow the child to be creative. Along with that, my thing is the thing is with, I'm understanding that music has kind of been taken out of the school.
It seems
Music
like
and
more and
art.
more
Places.
the arts are some of the first things to get cut, I would say. Yeah.
And what's important is that, especially with music and with it creativity, they've done studies where it has really gone into the mathematical points of using the brain, which helps them, aid them in other subjects. And with the lack of that, I think it inhibits the growth of the children. And I'm not quite understanding. I had thought when we were going to have lottery that there was money going to be put into the schools. And with that money, it could go into these different areas that have been taken away. Is that not true?
Well, I can't speak to the lottery specifically. I have a couple thoughts on that I want to share real quick. Number one, I think there have been a lot of studies on music and its effect. You know, if you play an instrument, you're this many times more likely to excel in math or do. I mean, I think there is a correlation there. I think overall, I think of kids' brains as, I mean, we call them sponges, but moldable. You know, I mean, you start to get rigid when the older you get, you know. Things start to firm up and that's it. But when you're a kid, I think our job is to develop as many areas of that brain as we can and fill it in nicely. A little bit over here, a little bit over here. Music will work on this part, math will work on this, sports are over here. And you want to, you know, I don't know that playing the cello is great for everybody, but I think getting as much variety in there and getting people creative outlets helps form that brain and do that sort of. That's the way I look at kids from 0 to 18, is that it's this mold, and you can see it. I mean, as you follow your kids through school, you're like, wow, here's where the drama part of the brain is coming up, you know, when they've broken up with a boyfriend and they're, you know, it's like, whoop, okay, we're hitting the, you know, the over-dramatic side here. And so I think that is really important. Raylene's asking about the budget. You know, I'm not going to get started on the lottery because it's such garbage. In terms of funding, the reality is, we were talking about this right before the show, the educational budget, education used to make up about 48% of the budget, I think, in
state budget.
In Oregon, the state budget. And it's down to 42-43% now. That 5 to 6%, in the case of Hillsborough, I know, has cut $70 million over the last 5 to 6 years. And these are huge cuts, and you don't have many options in where you cut that. Much of the budget is made up of staff and employees, and payroll is a huge portion of the budget, and school days are the other part. You know, you can say, well, I can save a bunch of money by cutting a day, and that's why we lose these school days.
In Hillsborough, I think it's about $1 million.
Yeah, $1 million a day. So when you sit down with your budget and you say, whew, I've got $8 million, an $8 million hole to fill, it's easy to say, well, we're going to lop off 8 days. But you also have to look at getting rid of teachers and things like that, and I think the arts are just sort of easy pickings for them in that, you know, we need math, right? Nobody's saying to get rid of math, English, you know, but maybe these art teachers are expendable and we'll just get rid of music or this. I think that's a terrible way to look at things.
Yeah, Raylene brings up two things in my mind. One, the lottery dollars, I think, now go to economic development, and I guess education isn't seen as an economic development. And then the distinction between education and learning. And there really is a distinction. I think what we're talking about for the most part so far here has been learning, and the importance of that, and the variety of that, and the complexity of that. Education, on the other hand, is simply a social construct that is imposed. We're educated in a certain way. If we were in a system where you know, we were living in a Bronze Age or a Stone Age, our education would look very different. Our learning may not be so different in that we're you know, working through parts of the brain, right, and developing skills, but what we're working towards would be different, and that's education. I think we've narrowed the scope of education. But I do think then, as Raylene has said, the ability now to really get into the brain and see and understand not just brain chemistry but brain function, and when those parts light up that are lit up because of that musical ability or you know, whatever, I think that will be a pretty compelling reason to bring those things back, because that is a major part of who we are and how we learn. So
it's like exercises. You have to work out that part of your brain, you know, just like you work on a muscle and you build it up.
Right.
Different parts of the brain all need the exercise. Raylene, can I have you turn your TV down, because there's a delay and it can interfere a little bit. But did we answer your question? Or did
Sorry.
That's okay. Did we address your question there? Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
There's one more thing. When I was a child, and I'm 64, we were taught etiquette and manners. And yes, we were well taught that in home, too.
Yes.
But the home is now where both parents are really working and nobody seems to have time. And the children seem to, out there, have a lack of respect and manners and etiquette. And when I do find a young person showing respect and etiquette, I really compliment them for that. And I understand that there was a line where people are going to start showing that or have courses in it in school because it's something our society really needs. And with all the electronic things going on, our phones and computers and no face-to-face reading body language and all that, I think we need to learn different forms of etiquette and manners towards one another and respect.
That's a great point, really. And I think a lot of people well, first of all, I think every generation feels like the new generation coming behind them is, way out of line. Like, oh, these kids today. I mean, that's sort of a cliche phrase, but it's fairly accurate. And I think my kids have the basics. Thank you, please, hold the door for somebody. There's another level of things where, wearing your hat indoors is sort of a thing that, in my day even, you don't do that. You take your hat off when you come in the building. It's sort of, And today I see, 20-somethings, all kinds of people, they just, go in with the hat, and I think, gosh, aren't you raised better than that? But, everybody has, I guess, a different line that they draw. Is school the appropriate place to, I guess here's my question then, Raylene, and I'll put this to you guys too. The argument could be made that, excuse me, every family has their own opinion on manners and the way things should be done. Can you standardize that, and can you teach that in schools? Is there a core that we can all agree thank you needs to be said? I mean, what do you think, Jeff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that there is. I think that that the outward behavior that constitutes manners, what we call manners, is an outward reflection of some inner stuff that's going on. And when whatever, if it's a hat worn or basically an attitude that comes from not saying thank you or not saying please, it does make me wonder about just what's going on in terms of thinking. There's bigger issues, for sure, and I do think that schools these days, and I read the professional magazines that come my way, and there is talk now. We're using the word values in schools. And character traits. At our school, we have character traits, and we explicitly teach them and talk about them. Develop the language and the thinking around them. So, and I think that most public schools would be in line with that too.
So, do you think that the home life of a lot of these students is lacking that from past times, or have you noticed through the years in your teaching experience that a general breakdown in manners and people able to be empathetic to those around them?
Yeah, I wouldn't just put it at the family level. I wouldn't bash families. I just look at society in general and think about the role models that are out there. Right there says
the last 10 years has been a steep dive in
a steep dive. What you see on TV,
shows and the things that we're seeing.
The things that are going on with sports figures. It's pretty endemic.
The bad behavior, yeah.
Yeah, it really is crazy. I thank you so much for the call, Raylene. We really appreciate it.
And thank you for listening.
Yeah, she brings up a good point.
That's a great point. Yeah. I want to address.
Anyone else out there? Please call
please
in.
give us a call. 503-207-7135. Don't forget to check us out online, wrongtvshow.com, or visit us on Facebook and like us on Facebook so you can get updates on when the next show is and so on. I want to talk about higher level education towards the end of the show here before we wrap it up. College tuitions have been skyrocketing for years and years now. I can't believe what people are paying for college. I barely made it through high school. In fact, I dropped out and then finished through like a correspondence course type of thing. College was not even an option for me. Never. I took a couple of classes here and there, but that's it. I know Jeff has a master's degree. Do you have a?
I have an associate degree, and yeah.
Okay, you have an associate's degree, and did you go to school for your health profession stuff?
I did, yeah.
Okay,
I did.
so you took some classes for that.
Yeah, I was in a liberal arts education here in back in the Boston area and here in Portland, but never finished. And then in my medical work, ended up getting an associate degree in that. Yeah.
Well, I have, I started out working in offices, being an office manager, that kind of thing, and I found myself handy with computers, worked my way to the IT field, and have worked my way up to a pay that can support my family and, be comfortably middle class without college. Some of it was luck, some of it was busting my butt. But, when I see friends of or people that I went to school with, through Facebook now I can see everybody follows where they're at, and I see people just graduating school, just having kids, trying to get a job now. And I've been in the workforce for 8 years, 10 years now. I just feel like I can't imagine starting right now. And is it worth it to wait? I mean, I know there's lots of numbers about if you go to college, you average this much more. I don't feel, in terms of my own kids, college is not for everybody, in my opinion. I would like to see a return to more of like a trade school type approach.
Vocational
what you want
thing.
to go into. Yeah, vocational learning. If you want to be a plumber, which is a fine trade, let's go to plumbing school and let's teach kids that. Not everybody needs to go through take a statistics class and an advanced, whatever, all these college courses that they're never necessarily going to use. Just to be, if they want to be an electrician or, there's certain classes for that. You want to be a doctor, you're going to be in school for 10 years, 10, 12 years. That's the way it is. Some people have to do that. But I don't know that we can say anymore college is for everybody, and I think we used to say that.
Yeah, no, and I think that there's a shift in that thinking in public education in K-12. You mentioned Common Core, the Common Core standards earlier, and I think that the buzz around that is to prepare kids to be college ready, not necessarily college bound.
Yes.
So there's a level of
is,
skill that
yes.
even someone who's not going to college these days need to have in terms of math and technical skills, which are much more advanced than even when you graduated from high school.
Yeah.
And the need there to be literate and to be well read and to be able to have the ability to jump into a job and then learn learn the job.
I heard the other day that 50% of college-bound high school graduates are not ready for college based on their SAT scores.
That sounds about right.
I mean, I think we're doing more in high school these days, from what I've seen with my kids who start high school, in offering vocation-specific options as they get through the grades, which I think is great. There is a way to get them started. If they already know as a sophomore, boy, I love working on engines and I want to, do something mechanical, they have sort of a path that they can go down for that now, which I don't feel existed in my day.
No, and you're also seeing a blurring between high school and community college, and the movement towards really, instead of a 4-year, you've got maybe a 6-year. You can take courses in high school right now that can be applied to post high school graduation, which is great. So you're right. I think movement towards that will make a big difference in terms of what kids know and their skills, but also in saving money. I mean, those are credits that are free.
Right.
Yeah, I was talking with someone earlier today who went and got a degree of some sort, and in the jobs that I've had, I've never once been asked for my high school diploma. Never been asked for a degree. You have a degree, but when you get a job, I don't think anybody asks you for a copy of it, right? I mean, how much does it get you? I think it depends on the field.
It depends on what the job is you're going for. Some of them, they require.
Education, I think a lot of times you need to get to the certain levels, you need a master's degree or a bachelor's degree for this.
Check that box off on the application.
Right. But if you check that box off, I wonder how many times that would get checked.
You have to provide the transcripts.
Oh, you do? Okay. So education maybe is one spot where you do have to follow through with that.
Yeah.
Every corporate job I've ever seen, I mean, if you said you went to Harvard, they might question you on that, maybe, just because it would send up a red flag. But if you said, I went to Vanderbilt or I went to this, or you just made up a name, I I don't know. I just don't know that anybody would check. I don't. I think maybe it's nice to say, oh, okay, yeah, so he went here and he learned this. But yeah, Mike,
That's the solution, Mick.
lie. Just lie about
Just no one
education.
go to college and everyone lie.
Not necessarily advocating that, although let's not be too hasty to judge.
I'm just
Well, Alexa did mention this today. She mentioned that kids tend to, she sees it in high school, at Century High School, that cheating is an option when so much of your grade depends on passing these tests or whatever, and so much of whatever school you're going to get into, if you're going to a college.
Is going to rely
So
on
hopefully
these
my
grades.
daughter's not doing that, but she sees that the summative, isn't that the term, summative? Your grade is based mostly on your test scores. And if you do poorly on your tests, you get in maybe a less desirable school, or somehow that detracts from your ability to get a job. So the tendency to cheat or whatever is there because of this pressure. Maybe on, like Trina was saying, even in high school, when she went to Nestucca High School, because the teachers were graded on these test scores of the students, they would have a test and the teacher would leave the room for most of the test time, and they would like compare notes and for the test.
Right.
So,
how many students do your kids go to school with? Because some of the kids tell me that they have like 50 people in their class, and I think you probably lose a lot of learning with that many kids in a class.
My kids, well, it's at Liberty, 2,000 kids. I'm gonna guess. Which?
Oh, I'm saying how many kids in each class for each lesson.
Oh.
'Cause I think
Well.
25 is the ideal, right? I mean,
So
I'm
at the
sure-
charter school, so there's an advantage that charter schools have, wherein they can set their own. They set their own what's the word, curriculum, and set some of their own policies and things. So at the charter school, we've got a cap of 24 kids per grade, which they don't have. I mean, I'm at Liberty, for example. We went to back to school night last week, maybe the week before, but they had some classes they were talking about that were pushing 40 or more.
I think
Kids.
that's about right.
But they were hiring. They said we're getting a couple more teachers in. We had, they had. Boy, I wish I could remember the number. Over 100 more students than they anticipated. The other schools in the Hillsborough School District also had a few more than anticipated, but they had more than everybody combined. Liberty, for some reason, ended up with a ton more students, and so they said, for right now, there's some super crowded classrooms. We're getting some folks in. We're going to juggle things around, and they did that this week. They reassigned some kids to different classes to thin that out. They're still probably in the 30s. I think it's safe to say. At the charter school, which goes through 8th grade, kindergarten through 8th, there's a max class size of 24. I don't know if you can say what an ideal is. I mean, perfect world, 5 kids to a teacher would be great.
I don't know.
You know?
Apprentice one-on-one.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, but what's realistic? I don't know.
we didn't really get into some of the differences between expeditionary learning, and I'd like to hear, maybe Jeff can come back sometime, and
Yeah,
I'd like
we
to
can
hear
we can
more
talk about
about-
that in a couple of minutes here. At least so City View is an expeditionary learning school here in Hillsborough. It is our only charter school. What would people ask me a lot? What's expeditionary learning? And I don't quite have a good answer for that. How would you describe that in a couple of sentences?
Succinctly, it's a kind of a combination of best teaching practices that take into consideration the whole child and allow for the creativity and curiosity to emerge. The school sees hands-on learning in the form of real-life experiences, so kids get out into the community more often, and field work in terms of field
oh,
work.
the field work, that was great.
I
Going
think
on
our-
those trips, that was great. I
Yeah.
mean, You don't
think it
do that in a
addresses-
regular public school.
I think it addresses some of the concerns that Dylan brought up earlier with this individualized child, feeling like you're in a mold or something like that. I think you don't get any of that at a charter school, which, I think they really capture the specialness. I'm not sure that's a word. The special portion that each child brings into the world, and
I
they
would hope so at our school anyway.
Yeah, I
At
think
our
so.
charter school.
I think they do, and I think what I found great about it is that it provides a story throughout the year that you can sort of apply your learning to.
Continuity.
Does that make sense?
In terms of a guiding question,
Yeah,
that
I mean,
is-
it's-
that- it's a
it's-
thread that's.
It's not math for math's sake. It's we have this sort of a guiding question is sort of the technical term that we call it, but it gives you sort of a background that a theme throughout the year
Right.
that you're sticking to, and I think that helps your brain sort of put things in order and say, okay, this all relates, and I know that my kids found that really helpful, and whether it's expeditionary learning or not, what a charter school offers is a different option and a way to do things at a smaller scale. The Hillsborough School District, or school districts in general, there's only so much that they can do when they implement new changes district-wide. You can't. There's only so much you can put in place that's going to affect 40,000 kids or whatever it is the same way. You really need to get to a smaller level and give schools freedom to do that, and I think that's where charter schools excel.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to talk about.
I know.
There's
Maybe
a lot,
education
yeah.
is-
Maybe we will have to have another one.
I think we should, yeah.
Yeah,
If
we'll
Jeff
have to have maybe
can come back.
we can talk specifically about charter schools and that. Are you guys thinking about putting a time up there? Okay. So yeah, we've got just a few minutes left here. What is there something? We talked about the funding a little bit earlier. I don't think we really have an answer as to why funding has gone down so much or how we can fix that.
Yeah.
We can't, certainly.
I don't know of any government entity where funding hasn't gone down. Maybe the, what is it, the NSA these days?
Yeah.
I don't know if funding's gone down there. And maybe that's part of it, part of the answer in terms of priorities.
I remember when I was in high school, even before I was in high school, bumper stickers that said, it'll be a great day when my school has all the money it needs and the Navy has to have a bake sale to, those stickers were out there 20 years ago. This is not something new.
No.
I think people have always felt like we need to get more money into education. To me, almost every problem we have in life can come down to education and can be fixed at some point with education. We're talking big picture here, certainly. But you know what? You've got problems with pollution. We're going to need some scientists and some smart people to come up with some stuff to fix that. They're only going to get that through education. You want less crime? You got to get educated people who aren't going to turn to crime. You want, all these things that you want, that's the kind of thing that you need education for. So we're just about out of time here. So I want to remind you to go to wrongtvshow.com. Check us out. Check us out at the Facebook link, and we'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody.
You're right.